What's the latest update you can give us on the evacuation of British nationals from Sudan?
Well, so far so good. It's going very smoothly. We've had about 300 out today, 4 flights. There's no logjam at the airport. The message to the British nationals who want to leave is come to the airport. There's no great backlog, no great congestion, and we're taking people out in a steady manner. And we want them all to come if they want to leave. And as you know, we are urging them to do so. If they are eligible, they should come as soon as they can.
You say it's gone smoothly. Some people are saying they've been stranded. There's been others saying there's been anarchy, there's been violence, that there should have been escorts to help people get to the airport safely. How can you say it's gone smoothly?
Well, I mean, in terms of getting to the airport, we adopted exactly the same route as the Germans did. The Germans told people they needed to get themselves to the airport and then they would be taken out, and we've done exactly the same thing. And people have been coming to the airport, and as I say, 300 today. There's a small queue, but not a large queue. The border force are processing people. It's all going relatively smoothly. I mean, of course there are problems, and in these sort of situations, the news isn't always accurate. But what I can tell you for certain tonight is that about 300 people have already come out. Will be more, I think, by the end of the day, and 4 flights have left.
You say that people should continue to come to the airport. Are you prepared to stay until everyone who wants to get there has managed to reach it?
We are absolutely in the hands of the ceasefire. So far, more or less, this ceasefire has held. This is the second day of a 3-day ceasefire. We are doing everything we can to make sure it's prolonged, and on the wider stage too, trying to negotiate for a longer ceasefire, because if the combatants don't lay down their arms and return to barracks, there is going to be a humanitarian catastrophe in Sudan. But as far as the British citizens are concerned, we are getting them out. There's a steady flow. If you want to go, please come to the airport.
Did you do any reviews after the evacuation in Afghanistan? Did you learn any lessons from that?
We learnt an enormous number of lessons from that, and those lessons have been implemented.
Like what kind of thing?
Well, the crisis centre that is working seamlessly across government, 24/7 since the crisis broke, processing, dealing with everything. We are following every single conceivable opportunity. But remember that Afghanistan was very different, and in some ways this is worse than that, because we don't have troops on the ground, we don't control the airport like we did in Afghanistan, and we don't have a permissive environment. Khartoum airport is not working. No planes can land or take off. And of course there's not a permissive environment. We had the permission of the Taliban to leave from Kabul. This is a ceasefire, and it can break down.
We're talking about the British nationals who can leave. Of course, in Sudan, there's many other people who can't leave, right, because they live there. What are we doing to help them?
Well, there's 16 million people already who are on humanitarian relief, help with food and also with other humanitarian support. That's before this crisis started. And as a result of this crisis, the humanitarian agencies have had to take their people out. 5 humanitarian workers have died. And so the situation is even worse. It's not just that there's a greater humanitarian crisis, it's that the humanitarian community are not there to help them. So that is why having a ceasefire is absolutely essential.
Now, we know you are someone who believes in international aid. You believe in helping the poorest people in the world, the most vulnerable people in the world, because obviously it's the right thing to do to help them, but also, I guess, there's a soft power there. You can intervene earlier to try and mean that you can shape the situation, if you like. Aid to Sudan halved recently, 142 million in 2020 to 2021 to 62 million in 21 to 22. These things have consequences, don't they?
Well, if you look at the position, over recent years we've spent something like £250 million there in relief, but you're looking at the bilateral figures. We help in a whole range of different ways through the United Nations, through the various agencies.
I'm just looking at the Foreign Office figures here, aren't I?
Yes,
what other figures am I supposed to look at?
They are the bilateral figures.
Yes, they are. They're aid from the UK to Sudan.
Yes, but remember, we support the people of Sudan through humanitarian relief, not only bilaterally, but also through UN agencies. So the picture is not quite as those figures would suggest, because there's other support that we give. But remember that when there is a humanitarian crisis, we have a degree of flexibility, as we've shown in the Horn of Africa, for example, so that we can do more.
But I guess my point is, if you intervene earlier with aid, I mean, you believe this too, right? You believe this. If you intervene early with aid, people argue that you don't have to have the same full-blown humanitarian crises?
Well, the humanitarian crises that occur, they can be mitigated in some ways by the sort of climate change adaptation money that we spend, which means that the next time the same sort of crisis strikes, then there is greater resilience. But remember, this did not start as a humanitarian crisis. It started because two generals were slugging it out for control. There's no ideology involved here, and there's no weather conditions involved here. It has broken down because of the behavior of these two generals. But the point I'm making is this, that on a humanitarian crisis, we do have a degree of flexibility, and we exercise that as crises arrive.
Okay. What are the safe and legal routes for someone in Sudan to claim asylum in the UK?
Well, at the moment, those safe and legal routes don't exist, but the Prime Minister, in the changes that we are making as part of the legislation which is going through the House tonight, has said that we will be seeking to set up safe and legal routes. There's a package in order to stop the awful cross-channel trade that is being perpetrated by the people smugglers. There's a package there, and it includes developing safe and legal routes. It includes a massive improvement in the relationship with the French, and it improves much quicker processing in the UK. So the Prime Minister's package, which we're legislating for tonight, is, I think, the right package to deter people from putting themselves into the hands of the modern-day equivalent of the slave trader and a leaky boat and crossing the channel.
So safe and legal routes to Sudan will happen?
No, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is that the government has made it clear that it will be trying to implement, as a result of this whole package, all the measures we're taking, that we will be looking to try and make sure that safe and legal routes are set up.
I mean, we have no timescale for this. We don't know what countries they're going to affect. We have no details on it. Are you happy with that? What's going on?
Well, I think it's important to get it right. There's a longer-term plan which the Prime Minister has brought in when he looked at the whole issue of the boats crossing the Channel and migration. But to your earlier point, I would just point out that the development budget, international development spending, which, as you say, I do believe strongly in, and so do millions of people in Britain, it is designed to try and build safer, more prosperous societies and countries over there, so that people don't feel the need to move to the richer world.
As you say, you've been voting on the illegal migration bill about trying to stop small boats, about sending people to Rwanda if they do make that crossing. Now, the Home Secretary says she can't say whether it's compatible with the Convention on Human Rights, but she wants MPs to vote for it anyway. I just want to read out to you what Sir Geoffrey Cox, the Conservative MP, said. He said the government is, in fact, asking this House to give legislative sanction to at least the possibility that a Minister of the Crown will deliberately disobey the international law obligations of this country. What would you say to your colleague?
Well, I think that we are testing the limits of the convention. And we're not the first government to do so. Labour did it as well on one occasion. We're testing the limits, and we must see what happens as a result of that testing.
So you're testing the limits of international law?
We are, yes, we are, and the government's been quite open about that, because the law as it operates at the moment, and in particular the conventions, the migration conventions, are quite dated. I think they do need to be updated, but it's a very difficult thing to do because you have to have agreement across all countries. So I do think they are needing to be tested, and that's what the government will be doing.
Sir Geoffrey Cox says MPs are being asked to approve quite consciously and deliberately a deliberate breach of our obligations under the ECHR. You're lawmakers. He says you're breaching the law. You say you're testing the limits of the law.
Well, if you look at the response from Robert Jenrick at the dispatch box, he wouldn't accept that. But
would you accept that?
What I'm saying to you is that we know that we are testing the frontiers of the law here. We've been quite open about that, as the government properly should be. It is because circumstances are so changed since these laws were first brought in.
I mean, testing the frontiers of the...
Let's see where it lands.
Testing the frontiers of the law sounds like you're doing some great, big, grand gesture, like sort of space exploration or something, when actually other people would say, look, let's call a spade, you're breaching the law.
What Sir Geoffrey Cox is a very eminent lawyer and former minister. Robert Jenrick is also a very eminent lawyer, and he does not agree with Sir Geoffrey's analysis. So I can't give you an answer on that legal argument tonight, but I can tell you that the reason the government is doing this is to try and resolve an intolerable situation where people are putting themselves in leaky boats, trying to cross one of the busiest shipping lanes in the world. It's extremely dangerous and it's wrong, and we're trying to stop it.
Okay, thank you very much.